Vice Admiral Thaddeus Wren had spent 35 years mastering the art of control. His decisions determined the fate of fleets, of missions, of men. But nothing in his decorated career prepared him for the sight of his daughter's bruised face across the briefing room table. Her SEAL uniform was crisp, her posture perfect, but the purple shadow spreading across her cheekbone told a different story. When she claimed it happened during training, he knew she was lying. By dawn, he would discover exactly who had touched his daughter. And for the first time in his stoic military career, the Admiral would consider breaking every rule he had sworn to uphold. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing for more powerful narratives about honor, justice, and the quiet heroes among us. Vice Admiral Thaddeus Wren strode through the polished corridors of Naval Special Warfare Command, with the measured pace of a man accustomed to immediate deference. His footsteps echoed against the gleaming floors, the sound preceding him like a herald. Officers and enlisted personnel alike straightened as he passed, their eyes forward, postures rigid with respect. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Coronado base, illuminating the countless commendations lining the walls, silent testaments to decades of American naval dominance. Several bore Wren's name, though he never spared them a glance. At precisely 0700, he reached the briefing room door. Commander Javier Del Mar, his aide for the past 7 years, waited with a leather portfolio containing the morning's reports. "Standard deployment updates this morning, sir," Del Mar said. "SEAL Team 4 returning from the Gulf. Team 8 preparing for rotation. Lieutenant Bishop has the intelligence briefs on the Straits situation." Wren gave a single nod, adjusted his immaculate uniform jacket, and entered the room. 20 naval officers rose in unison, the scrape of chairs against the floor giving way to perfect silence. Wren acknowledged them with a slight inclination of his head and moved toward his position at the head of the long table. "Be seated," he said, his voice carrying the weight of 35 years of command. As the officers resumed their seats, Wren's eyes performed their habitual scan of the assembled faces. His gaze moved methodically from person to person, evaluating each officer's readiness until his focus reached the far end of the table. The rhythm of his assessment faltered. Lieutenant Marielle Wren sat with perfect military bearing, her SEAL trident gleaming against her uniform. But beneath the overhead lights, her face told a different story. An unmistakable contusion bloomed across her right cheekbone, the swelling subtle but apparent. A second, smaller bruise shadowed her jawline. The Admiral's expression remained impassive, but those who knew him best might have noticed the momentary stillness that settled over him, the slight tightening around his eyes. The room had gone utterly quiet. Every officer present suddenly found their reports fascinating, gazes fixed downward, aware of the unspoken current that had just electrified the air. For 3 long seconds, father and daughter locked eyes across the table. Marielle's gaze was steady, professional, offering no acknowledgement of the tension. She was not here as his daughter. She was here as a lieutenant, a SEAL, an officer under his command. "Proceed with the briefing," the Admiral said, his voice betraying nothing. Lieutenant Bishop rose and began his presentation on intelligence developments, his words flowing over the table like water over stones. The Admiral appeared to be listening, making occasional notes, asking appropriate questions at appropriate intervals. But Commander Del Mar, seated to his right, noticed that the Admiral's pen remained poised over the same spot on his notepad for nearly 40 seconds as his gaze repeatedly returned to his daughter's face. Marielle participated in the briefing with precise contributions when her team's activities were discussed. Her voice was clear, authoritative, displaying no discomfort or hesitation. If not for the visible evidence on her face, nothing would have seemed amiss. As the meeting concluded 90 minutes later, officers gathered their materials and filed out. The Admiral remained seated, reviewing his notes with apparent concentration. "Lieutenant Wren," he said without looking up, "a moment of your time." The room emptied swiftly, leaving father and daughter alone in the sudden quiet. Marielle stood at attention before him, eyes forward, hands at her sides. "At ease, Lieutenant," he said, finally raising his eyes to meet hers. Marielle adopted the parade rest position, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back. The posture seemed to cause her a flicker of discomfort that she quickly suppressed. "My office would be more appropriate for this discussion," the Admiral said, rising from his chair. The walk to his office was silent. Personnel they passed in the hallway saluted crisply, their curious glances carefully hidden. Admiral Wren was known throughout the Navy for his unwavering professionalism. The presence of his daughter in the SEAL teams had been the subject of considerable speculation when she had first earned her trident, but in the 18 months since, both Wrens had maintained scrupulous boundaries between their professional and familial relationships. Inside the privacy of his office, with the door closed, the Admiral gestured toward a chair. "Sit down, Mariel." "I prefer to stand, sir." The Admiral studied her for a moment, noting how she subtly kept her weight off her right leg, then seated himself behind his desk. His office was Spartan by most standards, lacking the "I love me" wall of photographs with politicians and celebrities that many officers cultivated. His decorations were displayed with understated dignity, and only a single family photograph stood on his desk, turned so only he could see it. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. Mariel remained at parade rest, eyes fixed on a point over his shoulder. "It happened during close-quarters combat training, sir. Nothing serious." "I didn't ask how serious it was, Lieutenant. I asked who did it." "With respect, sir, training incidents are part of the program. I don't require or request special consideration." The Admiral leaned back slightly in his chair. "When did I suggest special consideration?" "You didn't, sir." A beat of silence. "But your inquiry could be interpreted that way by others." "We are alone, Lieutenant. Walls have ears in the team, sir, especially when you're the Admiral's daughter." Something flickered across the Admiral's features. Not quite a smile, but a momentary softening. "You sound like your mother." For the first time, Mariel's composure wavered slightly. She shifted her weight and winced involuntarily. "Medical has cleared you for duty?" the Admiral asked, his tone sharpening. "Yes, sir. Full duty." The Admiral's gaze remained steady on her face. "You're lying to me, Mariel." She met his eyes directly for the first time. "Permission to speak freely, sir. Always. The program is watching me. Every move, every reaction, every complaint or lack thereof. Not just me, all of us, the first women in the teams. We can't afford to give anyone ammunition." "Ammunition against what, precisely?" "Against the argument that we don't belong here." Her voice remained steady, but intensity burned behind her words. "That we're too soft, too weak, that standards were lowered, that we're a liability." The Admiral was silent for a moment. "Are you suggesting that what happened to you was not a standard training incident?" Mariel's expression closed. "I'm suggesting that I can handle my own affairs, sir." "That wasn't my question, Lieutenant. And with respect, sir, that's all the answer I can give you right now." Admiral Wren regarded his daughter for a long moment. The resemblance between them was subtle but unmistakable in the set of their jaws, the directness of their gazes. But where his hair had gone steel gray, hers was still the color of burnished mahogany, like her mother's had been. "Very well," he said finally. "You're dismissed, Lieutenant." Mariel came to attention, saluted crisply, and turned to leave. The Admiral noticed again the careful way she distributed her weight as she walked. "Mariel," he said as she reached the door. She paused without turning. "Sir, your mother would be proud." Her shoulders straightened almost imperceptibly. "Thank you, sir." After she left, Admiral Wren remained motionless behind his desk, staring at the closed door. Then, with deliberate movements, he opened his secure terminal and began typing. Night had fallen over the Coronado base. The corridors of the command building were largely deserted, except for the duty officers and the occasional patrol. In his office, illuminated only by the glow of his computer screen, Admiral Wren reviewed training footage from the past month. The Naval Special Warfare Center maintained comprehensive records of all training exercises. As commander, Wren had access to everything, or so he had believed. As he methodically searched the archives, he discovered curious gaps. Several training sessions involving his daughter's platoon showed equipment malfunction in place of footage. Others had clearly been edited, with timestamps jumping forward inexplicably. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he compared the training logs with the video archives. The discrepancies were subtle but undeniable. Someone had been systematically altering records. He switched to the incident reports. 3 female SEAL candidates had been hospitalized in the past year for training injuries. All 3 had subsequently dropped out of the program. The medical reports listed injuries consistent with intensive training. But when cross-referenced with the training schedules, none of the women had been participating in high-risk evolutions on the days they were injured. One name appeared repeatedly in the supervisory logs: Master Chief Donovan Acosta, lead close quarters combat instructor, 22 years of service, multiple combat deployments, recipient of the Silver Star and Bronze Star with Valor. His fitness reports were exemplary, too exemplary, the Admiral thought. No negative comments whatsoever for over a decade. In the military, perfect records often indicated not perfection, but protection. The door to his office opened without a knock. Only one person on base would enter without announcement. "Still at it, sir?" Commander Delmar set a cup of black coffee on the desk. "It's nearly midnight." "Evidently," Wren replied without looking away from the screen. Delmar glanced at the monitor, his expression carefully neutral. "Training records, sir?" "Among other things." A moment of silence stretched between them. Delmar had served as the Admiral's aide long enough to recognize dangerous waters. "Sir, I should remind you that direct intervention in training protocols could be seen as preferential treatment, especially given Lieutenant Wren's position." The Admiral's fingers paused over the keyboard. "I'm reviewing training records, Commander. That falls well within my purview." "Of course, sir." Delmar hesitated. "If I may speak candidly, when have you ever not? The Poseidon Group has significant influence in selection and training, sir. They've made their position on female operators quite clear." The Admiral turned slowly to face his aide. "The Poseidon Group is an unofficial association of former operators. They have no official standing in this command. Unofficial, yes, but their reach extends throughout the naval special warfare community, into Washington as well. Are you suggesting I should ignore potential misconduct because of political considerations, Commander?" Delmar straightened. "No, sir. I'm suggesting awareness of the battlefield before engagement." The Admiral turned back to his screen. On the display, grainy surveillance footage showed a training exercise in the CQC facility. Lieutenant Wren and 5 other operators moved through a mock structure, clearing rooms with textbook precision. In the third room, a figure, Master Chief Acosta, could be seen deliberately positioning himself in Marielle's path before the camera angle shifted away. When the footage resumed from another angle, Marielle was on the ground. The timestamp showed a gap of 12 seconds. "Leave me," the Admiral said quietly. "Sir, that will be all, Commander." After Delmar left, Admiral Wren replayed the footage, frame by frame. In the split second before the camera angle changed, he could see Acosta's body turning, his arm extending toward Marielle's position. The Admiral's hand moved to the mouse, cursor hovering over the command to close the file. Instead, he opened a new search window and typed in a name: Lieutenant Soren Nakamura. The personnel file appeared immediately. Nakamura had been among the first female candidates selected for SEAL training, exemplary scores in all preliminary evaluations. Described as possessing exceptional physical and mental fortitude by her initial cadre. She had completed Hell Week, the brutal 5-day ordeal that eliminated most SEAL candidates, only to wash out 3 weeks later after a training accident left her with a shattered collarbone. Current assignment: Intelligence Specialist, Pacific Fleet Headquarters, Pearl Harbor. The Admiral reached for his secure phone. The sun was barely breaking over the horizon when Lieutenant Soren Nakamura reported to Admiral Wren's office as ordered. Despite the early hour, she was immaculately presented, her uniform pristine, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. "Lieutenant Nakamura reporting as ordered, sir." "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Lieutenant. Please be seated." Nakamura sat with the careful precision of someone accustomed to being evaluated on every movement. Her eyes tracked the Admiral as he moved from behind his desk to the chair beside her, rather than maintaining the barrier between them. "I understand you had a brief TDY here for the joint intelligence exercise," he said. "Yes, sir. I return to Pearl tomorrow." Fortuitous timing. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. "Lieutenant, I've reviewed your service record. It's exemplary." "Thank you, sir. You were among the first women selected for SEAL training after the combat exclusion policy was lifted." Something flickered behind her eyes. "Yes, sir. You completed Hell Week. Quite an achievement." "Thank you, sir. And yet, you didn't complete the program." Nakamura's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "No, sir. I was injured during CQC training in the third phase. I've read the report. A fall from the climbing wall resulted in a compound fracture of your clavicle. Her gaze didn't waver. That's correct, sir. Curious? The Admiral said, his tone conversational. The report indicates you were alone on the climbing facility when you fell. Standard protocol requires a minimum of 2 candidates on the structure at all times, with instructor supervision. Silence stretched between them. Nakamura's expression remained carefully neutral, but her fingers tensed against the armrests of her chair. Lieutenant, the Admiral continued, this conversation is not being recorded. It will not appear in any official report. You have my word on that. May I ask the purpose of this discussion, sir? I'm conducting an informal review of certain training practices. With respect, Admiral, why now? It's been over 2 years since I left the program. The Admiral considered her for a moment. Because my daughter came home with bruises that weren't from any training evolution I can find in the official records. Understanding dawned in Nakamura's eyes. Lieutenant Ren. Yes. Nakamura looked down at her hands, then back up at the Admiral. Her expression had hardened. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. Master Chief Acosta believes women weaken the teams. What happened to me wasn't training. It was elimination. The Admiral's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Go on. After Hell Week, the physical abuse became systematic, targeted, always when cameras were conveniently malfunctioning or during unofficial training sessions. Nothing that would leave evidence beyond what could be explained as standard training injuries. Nakamura's voice remained steady, but her knuckles had gone white. I wasn't the only one. 4 of us made it through Hell Week. None of us graduated. And the climbing wall incident? Nakamura's jaw tightened. I never fell from any climbing wall, sir. Master Chief Acosta and 2 instructors cornered me in the equipment room. They said they were going to help me pack for my flight home. When I refused to quit, things escalated. The Admiral was very still. Did you report this? A bitter smile touched Nakamura's lips. To whom, sir? Master Chief Acosta's brother-in-law was the senior medical officer. His former swim buddy was running the training cadre. The investigating officer was his classmate from Bruised. The Poseidon Group, the Admiral said quietly. Nakamura's eyes widened slightly. You know about them. I'm becoming increasingly aware. Then you know what you're up against, sir. She leaned forward. The Poseidon Group isn't just a few disgruntled veterans. They're a power network extending throughout naval special warfare and into the private sector. They've made it their mission to ensure women never succeed in the teams. And yet my daughter earned her trident. Your daughter is Admiral Thaddeus Wren's daughter, sir. Even the Poseidon Group has limits to their reach, but that doesn't mean they won't try to break her another way. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Lieutenant Nakamura, would you be willing to provide a sworn statement about your experiences? Her expression clouded. To what end, sir? The system protected them before. It will protect them again. Perhaps, but this time they don't face the system. The Admiral's voice was quiet, but something in his tone made Nakamura straighten. They face me. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of the Naval Special Warfare Center as Master Chief Donovan Acosta led his CQC training class through their warm-up exercises. 20 SEAL trainees moved with synchronized precision through a series of combatives drills, their faces set with concentration. Acosta moved between them, his stocky frame still powerful despite his 45 years. His voice carried across the training floor, a controlled bark honed by decades of instruction. Control your breathing, control your movements, control your fear. Without control, you're useless to your team. His gaze fell on one of the female trainees, Ensign Valencia, as she executed a takedown on her partner. Her technique was flawless, but Acosta's expression darkened. Sloppy, Ensign, reset and do it again. Valencia showed no reaction beyond a curt, "Yes, Master Chief," as she helped her partner up and reset her position. Acosta continued circling the trainees, his focus repeatedly returning to Valencia. When the warm-up concluded, he divided the class into pairs for the day's training evolution, room-clearing procedures under stress conditions. Valencia, you're with me for demonstration, he announced. The rest of you observe first rotation. Valencia stepped forward without hesitation, though the other trainees exchanged quick glances. Being selected for demonstration by Master Chief Acosta was rarely a positive experience. Standard procedure, Acosta said, positioning Valencia at the entry point of the mock structure. I'll play opposition. Remember your training. As Valencia prepared to enter, Acosta leaned close to her ear, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Let's see if you break as easily as Nakamura did. The color drained from Valencia's face, but she maintained her stance, weapon at the ready. At Acosta's signal, she entered the structure, moving with textbook precision through the first room. As she rounded the corner into the second room, Acosta was waiting. His counter-move came fast and hard, far beyond the intensity used in training demonstrations. Valencia crashed into the wall, her weapon clattering across the floor. Dead, Acosta announced loudly enough for the observing trainees to hear. Sloppy entry, sloppy sweep, sloppy footwork. This is why proper training matters, people. In real combat, there are no second chances. Valencia pushed herself upright, blood trickling from her split lip. Her eyes met Acosta's, and for an instant, raw hatred flashed between them. Something to say, Ensign? Acosta's voice was dangerously soft. No, Master Chief. Good. Back in line. Davies, Santos, you're up next. As the training continued, Lieutenant Commander Ezra Phoenix observed from the doorway, his presence unnoticed by the focused trainees. His expression remained neutral, but his eyes followed Acosta's movements with careful attention. When the session ended and the trainees filed out for their next evolution, Phoenix approached Acosta. Master Chief. Acosta looked up, wiping sweat from his face with a towel. Commander, didn't see you there. Evidently, interesting training technique. Acosta's expression hardened slightly. I train operators for combat, sir, not for feelings. Of course. Phoenix's tone was casual. I was particularly interested in your demonstration with Ensign Valencia. Standard opposition force tactics. Standard? Phoenix repeated. Like your sessions with Lieutenant Wren? Acosta went very still. I'm not sure what you're implying, sir. No implication, Master Chief. Simple observation. Phoenix glanced around the now empty training floor. Curious how often the cameras malfunction during your sessions with female trainees. Equipment issues are maintenance's problem, not mine. Indeed. Phoenix turned to leave, then paused. By the way, Admiral Wren has called an emergency command meeting tomorrow, EO 700. Full attendance required. Subject: Training Protocol Review. Phoenix's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure it will be illuminating. That night, Lieutenant Marielle Wren completed her final lap in the training pool, touching the wall with a controlled precision that belied her exhaustion. The facility was nearly deserted at 2200 hours, which was precisely why she preferred to train then. Fewer eyes, fewer whispers, fewer evaluations of every movement. She pulled herself from the water, muscles protesting. The bruising on her face had darkened, and new marks bloomed across her ribs where she'd been accidentally struck during the day's training evolution. Marielle moved carefully to minimize the pain, aware that showing weakness was not an option. The pool door opened, and Master Chief Acosta entered, his squat figure silhouetted against the corridor light. Late-night training, Lieutenant? His voice echoed in the cavernous space. Marielle straightened, water streaming from her body. Yes, Master Chief. Dedication? Admirable. Acosta approached, stopping at the pool's edge, though some might call it compensating. Compensating, Master Chief? For natural deficiencies. His eyes traveled over her with cold assessment. Women simply don't have the upper body strength, the lung capacity, the pain tolerance of male operators. Science, not opinion. Marielle met his gaze evenly. Then, I'll just have to work twice as hard. That's the problem with you and your kind, Lieutenant. You think hard work overcomes biology? He moved closer. Your father may have pulled strings to get you here, but the teams will eventually correct that mistake. My father did nothing of the sort, Master Chief. No? Acosta's smile was unpleasant. Then why is he suddenly reviewing training footage? Why is he interviewing washouts from 2 years ago? Marielle's expression betrayed nothing, but her pulse quickened. I wouldn't know, Master Chief. Let me be clear, Lieutenant. Your presence here is an experiment, one that will fail. The only question is how much damage you'll do to the teams before that happens. Is that a threat, Master Chief? No, Lieutenant. It's a promise. Acosta's voice dropped. Tomorrow night, remedial CQC training, 2,100 hours, just you and me. We'll see what you're really made of. Before Muriel could respond, the pool door opened again. Lieutenant Commander Phoenix stood in the entrance, his expression unreadable. Everything all right here? He asked. Acosta stepped back. Just discussing training schedules, sir. Lieutenant Wren has been struggling with certain evolutions. I've scheduled some remedial training. Phoenix's eyes moved between them. I see. Well, don't let me interrupt. Acosta nodded curtly and left, brushing past Phoenix without another word. When the door closed, Phoenix approached Marielle, who was now wrapping a towel around herself, her movements stiff with concealed pain. You want to tell me what that was really about? Phoenix asked quietly. Training discussion, sir, as the Master Chief said. Phoenix studied her bruised face. Those injuries weren't from any scheduled evolution. Training accidents happen, sir. Not like this, not with this pattern. Phoenix lowered his voice. Lieutenant, if there's something happening that I should know about, there isn't, sir. Marielle cut him off, her tone final. Phoenix was silent for a moment. Your father has called a command meeting for tomorrow morning. Marielle's composure slipped. What? Why? Training protocol review was the official reason. She closed her eyes briefly. He's making a mistake. Is he? Phoenix challenged. Or is he doing exactly what needs to be done? You don't understand. If he intervenes, everything I've worked for is compromised. They'll say I couldn't handle it, that I needed Daddy to fight my battles. And if he doesn't, what then? How far does Acosta go before someone stops him? Marielle had no answer. Get some rest, Lieutenant, Phoenix said finally. Tomorrow will be a significant day, one way or another. After Marielle left, Phoenix remained by the pool, considering. Then, with sudden decision, he activated his body camera, standard equipment that most officers deactivated during off-duty hours, and set it to record. In his quarters, Admiral Wren sat at his desk, the blue light of his computer screen illuminating his weathered features. On the screen before him was a dossier on Master Chief Donovan Acosta that went far beyond the official service record. Commander Ilara Vetch from Naval Intelligence had delivered it personally an hour earlier. Everything you asked for, sir, she'd said, placing the encrypted drive on his desk, and considerably more that you didn't. The files revealed a disturbing pattern. Acosta's personal finances showed unexplained deposits coinciding with the dismissal of each female SEAL candidate. Communications with several defense contractors suggested a coordinated effort to maintain the status quo in special operations, an all-male preserve. Most damning were the medical records. Female candidates who had trained under Acosta showed injury patterns consistent with targeted abuse, not training accidents. You've spent 35 years building this career, sir, Vetch had warned before leaving. Are you willing to burn it all down? The Admiral had contemplated the photograph on his desk, Marielle at her Naval Academy graduation, standing beside him in her dress whites. Behind them, barely visible, was a stone memorial bearing the name of Catherine Wren, wife and mother, lost to cancer a decade earlier. Some things matter more than stars on a collar, he had answered. Now, as midnight passed, the Admiral made his decision. He closed the files, secured his computer, and reached for his phone. Commander Delmar, he said when his aide answered. Call an all-hands command meeting, 0700 tomorrow. Mandatory attendance for all department heads, training cadre supervisors, and team commanders. Subject, sir? Training protocol review. Sir? Delmar hesitated. Admiral Carlisle has requested advance notice of any policy changes affecting Special Warfare Command. This isn't a policy change, Commander. It's a reckoning. After ending the call, Admiral Wren opened his safe and removed a small recording device. On it was Lieutenant Commander Phoenix's transmission, sent just 30 minutes earlier, surveillance footage from his body camera showing Acosta's intimidation of Lieutenant Wren at the pool. The Admiral's expression remained impassive, but his hand tightened around the device until his knuckles showed white against his skin. He placed it carefully beside his computer, then opened his bottom drawer and removed a bottle of scotch and a single glass. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid, held it up to the light, then set it down, untouched. Control had been his watchword throughout his naval career. Controlled responses, controlled decisions, controlled consequences. It had earned him his rank, his reputation, and the respect of everyone under his command. But as he contemplated the evidence before him and the bruises on his daughter's face, Admiral Thaddeus Wren considered, for the first time in 35 years, what it might feel like to lose control. His phone chimed with an incoming message. It was from Commander Vetch. Additional surveillance recovered. Acosta entering Marielle's quarters on 3 occasions when she was on deployment. Timestamps and keycard logs attached. The Admiral stared at the message for a long moment. Then, with deliberate care, he picked up the glass of scotch and drank it in a single swallow. At 0300 hours, Master Chief Donovan Acosta entered his apartment, flipping on the light. He froze in the doorway. Admiral Wren sat in the darkness of his living room, still in his service khakis, his face illuminated by the soft glow of a tablet in his hands. "Jesus Christ," Acosta startled, his hand instinctively moving to his hip where a sidearm would normally be. "You've been hurting my daughter," Wren said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "I came to understand why. With respect, sir, training is meant to be difficult. If she can't handle... Your camera was off for 93 minutes last night, Master Chief, but Lieutenant Commander Phoenix's body camera wasn't." Wren stood, adjusting his uniform. 0700 hours. Command briefing room. Everyone will be there." As he passed Acosta, he stopped. "How much did they pay you to break her?" The shock on Acosta's face confirmed everything the Admiral had suspected. For a moment, genuine fear flickered in the Master Chief's eyes. "Sir, I don't know what you think you know. I know everything, Master Chief. Every deposit, every communication, every training accident." The Admiral's voice was soft, almost gentle. "The only thing I don't know is whether it will be more satisfying to end your career or to watch you try to salvage it tomorrow morning." Wren moved to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Master Chief, cancel your remedial training session with my daughter. You won't be on the training cadre after tomorrow." As the Admiral disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, Acosta remained frozen in his doorway, the realization of his imminent downfall etched across his face. Have you ever had someone fight for you when you tried to handle things alone? Share your story in the comments, and if this resonates with you, subscribe for more tales of hidden strength and quiet justice. Lieutenant Marielle Wren woke before dawn, her body protesting as she swung her legs over the edge of her bed. The bruises from yesterday's training had deepened overnight, a topographical map of purple and blue spreading across her ribs. She moved carefully to the bathroom, avoiding her reflection in the mirror as she splashed cold water on her face. The pain was familiar now. After 18 months in the teams, she had grown accustomed to the systematic targeting that came with being one of the first female Navy SEALs. What had begun as subtle resistance, equipment mysteriously malfunctioning, mission-critical information arriving late, teammates forgetting to relay communications, had escalated into something more direct under Master Chief Acosta's supervision. Marielle dressed methodically, each movement precise despite the discomfort. Her uniform was immaculate, her hair secured in a tight bun that revealed every line of her face. The bruising around her eye had darkened overnight, making concealment impossible. She didn't try. Showing up with makeup would only give them another reason to claim she didn't belong. As she fastened her trident above her left breast pocket, Marielle paused. The golden symbol of everything she had fought for gleamed in the early morning light. She had earned it through Hell Week, through combat dives in frigid waters, through endless miles under crushing loads, through the whispers and the sabotage and the isolation. No one could take that away from her, not even Acosta. Her phone chimed with a message from Lieutenant Commander Phoenix. "Command meeting 700. Be prepared." Marielle stared at the screen, her stomach tightening. Her father was making his move. Everything she had worked for, proving she belonged on merit alone, was at risk. If the Admiral intervened, the whispers would become shouts. She couldn't cut it without Daddy's protection. Outside her quarters, the base was stirring to life. The morning air carried the salt of the Pacific as she made her way toward the command building. Naval Special Warfare Command operated from an unassuming complex that belied the elite operations directed from within. Marielle moved through the security checkpoints with practiced efficiency, nodding to the guards who had long since grown accustomed to the Admiral's daughter in SEAL uniform. Inside, the corridor leading to the main briefing room buzzed with unusual activity. Senior officers who rarely appeared before midday were arriving, their faces set in professional masks that didn't quite hide their curiosity. Master Chief Acosta stood near the water fountain, deep in conversation with two other senior enlisted men. When he saw Marielle, his conversation stopped abruptly. The look he gave her was pure venom. Commander Delmar intercepted her before she could enter the briefing room. "Lieutenant Wren, the Admiral requested you wait until called." "Sir, I was under the impression this was a full command meeting." "It is." Delmar's expression gave nothing away. "But the Admiral has asked that you join later?" Marielle nodded, concealing her confusion. "Understood, sir." She took position in an alcove across from the briefing room, standing at parade rest as officers and senior enlisted filed past. Many glanced her way, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely disguised contempt. The bruises on her face felt suddenly exposed, a beacon announcing her weakness. She lifted her chin slightly, gaze fixed ahead. Admiral Carlyle arrived last, his 4 stars catching the overhead light as he moved briskly down the corridor. He paused when he saw Marielle. "Lieutenant," he acknowledged with a slight nod. "Admiral," she responded, coming to attention. His eyes traveled briefly to the bruising on her face, but he made no comment as he continued into the briefing room. The doors closed behind him with an ominous finality. Inside the briefing room, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Admiral Wren stood at the head of the table, his bearing as rigid and controlled as ever. Commander Ilara Vetch from Naval Intelligence stood to his right, a sleek laptop open before her. The assembled officers and senior enlisted personnel shifted uncomfortably in the silence. Admiral Carlyle took his seat, his expression carefully neutral. "Thaddeus, perhaps you could enlighten us about the urgent nature of this meeting." Admiral Wren surveyed the room, his gaze lingering briefly on Master Chief Acosta. "Gentlemen, I've called this meeting to address certain training practices within our command that have come to my attention." He nodded to Commander Vetch, who tapped a key on her laptop. The large screen at the front of the room illuminated with surveillance footage from the training facilities. The timestamp showed 3 weeks earlier. "This is standard close-quarters combat training for Team 6, 2nd Platoon," Admiral Wren narrated as the footage played. The assembled officers watched as operators moved through mock structures, clearing rooms with practiced precision. "Notice Lieutenant Wren's position and technique," the Admiral continued, his voice clinically detached. "Standard approach, textbook execution." On screen, Marielle moved with fluid efficiency, her weapon sweeping sectors with controlled precision. As she entered the third room, Master Chief Acosta appeared in frame. The footage showed him deliberately positioning himself in Marielle's path. Then the camera angle shifted, creating a 12-second gap in the visual record. When the footage resumed from another angle, Marielle was on the ground. Acosta stood over her, his posture aggressive. There was no audio, but his expression was clear enough. "Equipment malfunction," Admiral Wren noted dryly. "Curious how often our surveillance systems experience such specific failures." He nodded again to Commander Vetch, who cued another video. This one showed the pool facility from the previous night. Acosta confronting Marielle, his body language intimidating as he leaned into her space. This time, audio accompanied the footage. "Your father may have pulled strings to get you here, but the teams will eventually correct that mistake." Marielle's response was clear and controlled. "My father did nothing of the sort, Master Chief. Let me be clear, Lieutenant. Your presence here is an experiment, one that will fail. The only question is how much damage you'll do to the teams before that happens." Throughout the room, officers straightened in their seats. Several of the senior enlisted personnel shifted uncomfortably. Admiral Carlyle's expression darkened as he watched. "Tomorrow night, remedial CQC training, 2,100 hours, just you and me. We'll see what you're really made of." The footage ended with Lieutenant Commander Phoenix's arrival. Admiral Wren allowed the silence that followed to stretch for several seconds, his gaze moving from face to face around the table. "Master Chief Acosta," he said finally, "would you care to explain this interaction?" Acosta straightened in his chair. "With respect, sir, training is meant to be difficult. Lieutenant Wren has struggled with certain evolutions. As her instructor, it's my duty to ensure she meets the standard." "The standard," Admiral Wren repeated. "And would you say your approach to Lieutenant Wren is consistent with how you train other operators?" "Absolutely, sir. I hold everyone to the same high standard." Admiral Wren nodded to Commander Vetch once more. The screen displayed a statistical analysis of training injuries over the past 2 years. Female candidates under your supervision experience injuries at a rate 340% higher than their male counterparts, Master Chief. Perhaps you could explain this discrepancy? Acosta's jaw tightened. Women have different physical capabilities, sir. It's simply biology. A murmur ran through the room. Admiral Carlyle leaned forward. Master Chief, that's enough. No, please continue, Admiral Wren said, his voice dangerously soft. I'm quite interested in your biological expertise, Master Chief, particularly as it relates to these. The screen changed to display bank records, deposits into an offshore account, each corresponding to the date a female SEAL candidate washed out of training. Or perhaps you could explain these communications. Admiral Wren continued as the screen displayed email exchanges between Acosta and several defense contractors, all members of the Poseidon Group. The messages discussed maintaining standards and addressing the female problem in explicit terms. The color drained from Acosta's face. Sir, I don't know where you got those, but they're taken out of context. The context seems quite clear, Master Chief. Admiral Wren's voice remained perfectly controlled. You've been systematically targeting female candidates for elimination, accepting payment for doing so, and coordinating with outside entities to undermine Naval Special Warfare Command policy. He turned to the assembled officers. This isn't about lowering standards. It's about ensuring that every sailor who meets those standards has an equal opportunity to serve. It's about the integrity of this command. Admiral Carlyle cleared his throat. Thaddeus, these are serious accusations. Due process must be followed. I agree completely, Admiral Wren responded, which is why I've prepared formal charges. Master Chief Acosta, you are hereby relieved of duty pending investigation into conduct unbecoming, conspiracy, and assault. Acosta surged to his feet. This is a witch hunt. You're destroying the teams to protect your precious daughter. This is why women don't belong here. The room fell silent. 2 Marine guards entered, positioning themselves on either side of the doorway. Admiral Wren's expression remained unchanged. Master Chief Donovan Acosta, you will surrender your credentials and report to the Provost Marshal immediately. For a moment, it seemed Acosta might resist. Then, with deliberate slowness, he removed his identification badge and placed it on the table. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and threatening. Actually, Master Chief, it is, Admiral Wren replied. Marine escorts will accompany you to retrieve your personal effects, after which you will be escorted off base. As Acosta was led from the room, Admiral Wren turned to the remaining officers. Let me be absolutely clear. This command will uphold the highest standards of professionalism and integrity. Any individual who cannot abide by those principles has no place in naval special warfare. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Commander Delmar, please ask Lieutenant Wren to join us. Marielle entered the briefing room to find every eye upon her. The bruises on her face felt suddenly glaring under the harsh fluorescent lights. She came to attention before the assembled command. Lieutenant Marielle Wren, reporting as ordered, sir. Admiral Wren regarded her with the same professional distance he showed all officers under his command. Lieutenant, are you aware of why you've been called to this meeting? No, sir. You've been the subject of systematic targeting and abuse disguised as training, Lieutenant. Did you feel you could not report this through your chain of command? Marielle hesitated, aware of the delicate balance between truth and career suicide. Sir, I believed I could handle the situation without intervention, even when that situation involved clear violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Sir, as one of the first women in the teams, my actions set precedent. I felt it essential to demonstrate that I could overcome challenges without special consideration. Admiral Wren studied her for a long moment. Your dedication is noted, Lieutenant. However, allowing abuse to continue unchallenged doesn't demonstrate strength. It perpetuates a culture that undermines unit cohesion and operational effectiveness. He addressed the room at large. Effective immediately, I am ordering a comprehensive review of all training protocols and practices. Commander Phoenix will oversee this review with support from Naval Intelligence. Any personnel with information about similar incidents are directed to come forward without fear of retribution. Admiral Carlyle leaned forward. Admiral Wren, while I support addressing misconduct, I'm concerned about the broader implications. The Poseidon Group has significant influence both within the Navy and in Washington. I'm aware, Admiral, Wren replied, which is why I'm recusing myself from this investigation and turning over command to you, effective immediately. A shock rippled through the room. Marielle stiffened, her composure momentarily fracturing. Admiral Wren began removing his insignia. My personal connection to Lieutenant Wren creates a conflict of interest that could compromise this investigation. I cannot and will not allow that to happen. Admiral, Carlyle raised a hand. That won't be necessary, Thaddeus. All eyes turned to the senior admiral. Carlyle's expression was grave as he surveyed the room. Your investigation has uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that extends far beyond Master Chief Acosta. The integrity of Naval Special Warfare Command is at stake. He stood, his authority filling the room. I am hereby ordering a full command investigation into the Poseidon Group's influence within our ranks. All personnel will cooperate fully. This isn't about female operators or changing standards. It's about ensuring that this command operates with honor and integrity, free from outside influence. Admiral Wren nodded once, acknowledgement passing between the two senior officers. Lieutenant Wren, Carlyle continued, you are temporarily reassigned to Commander Phoenix's training review team. Your experience will be valuable in identifying and addressing these issues. Yes, sir, Marielle responded, her expression carefully controlled. This meeting is adjourned. Commander Phoenix, Commander Vetch, and both admirals will remain for further discussion. As the room emptied, Lieutenant Commander Phoenix approached Marielle. Report to my office at 0900, Lieutenant. We have work to do. She nodded, acutely aware of the sidelong glances from departing officers. Some were appraising, others resentful. The battle lines were being drawn. Phoenix lowered his voice. For what it's worth, what you endured took more courage than most combat situations I've faced. Before she could respond, he moved away to join the admirals. Marielle left the briefing room, her steps measured despite the turmoil within. In the corridor outside, clusters of officers and enlisted personnel broke apart as she passed, conversations dying abruptly. Word traveled fast in the teams. By now, everyone on base would know that the Admiral's daughter had been the catalyst for a command-wide investigation. Everything she had worked to prove, that she belonged on merit alone, seemed suddenly in jeopardy. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with Senior Chief Peterson, Acosta's closest ally on the training cadre. His expression was cold as he deliberately stepped into her path. Happy now, Lieutenant? You've just destroyed a good man's career. Marielle met his gaze evenly. The Master Chief destroyed his own career, Senior Chief. That's not how the teams will see it. Peterson leaned closer. You think this changes anything? You and the other females are still a liability, a distraction, a political experiment that risks operators' lives. Is that a threat, Senior Chief? Just a reality check, Lieutenant. The Admiral won't always be there to protect you. I've never asked for his protection, Marielle replied, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. And I don't need it now. She stepped around him and continued down the corridor, her back straight, feeling his eyes boring into her until she turned. The corner. Outside, the morning sun had fully risen over the base, reflecting off the waters of San Diego Bay. Marielle paused on the steps of the command building, drawing a careful breath that didn't aggravate her bruised ribs. The air tasted of salt and aviation fuel from North Island across the bay, familiar scents that usually centered her. Today they offered no comfort. Everything had changed in the span of a single meeting. The careful boundaries she had maintained between her identity as Thaddeus Wren's daughter and Lieutenant Marielle Wren, Navy SEAL, had been obliterated. Now, she would forever be the female operator who couldn't handle the pressure, who needed Daddy to step in. Lieutenant Wren. The voice startled her from her thoughts. Lieutenant Soren Nakamura stood at the bottom of the steps, her intelligence uniform crisp in the morning light. Lieutenant Nakamura, Marielle acknowledged, descending the steps to meet her. Nakamura's expression was unreadable. I heard about the meeting. News travels fast. It's the teams. Nothing stays secret for long. Nakamura glanced toward the command building. For what it's worth, what your father did took courage. He shouldn't have had to do it. No, he shouldn't. Nakamura's gaze was direct. But that doesn't mean it wasn't necessary. They began walking together across the quad, two women in a sea of khaki and camouflage. The sidewalk was wide enough for three people to walk abreast, yet male officers approaching them instinctively expected the women to make way. Neither did. "You know what happens next," Nakamura said after a moment. "The Poseidon Group won't take this lying down. They have too much invested in keeping special operations all male." "Let them try," Marielle replied. "They're fighting a losing battle." Nakamura gave her a sidelong look. "Is that what you think this is? A battle already won?" "No, but it's a battle worth fighting. Even if it costs you your place in the teams, your career." Marielle stopped walking. "What exactly are you saying, Lieutenant?" "I'm saying the Poseidon Group has connections throughout the military and government. They've spent years building a network designed to maintain the status quo. Your father just declared war on them. There will be consequences. For him or for me." "Both," Nakamura said bluntly. "You need to be prepared." Before Marielle could respond, her phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from Lieutenant Commander Phoenix. "Meeting moved up. My office, 0830. "I have to go," Marielle said, checking her watch. "Phoenix wants me early." Nakamura nodded. "Watch your back, Lieutenant. The visible enemies aren't the ones you need to worry about." With that cryptic warning, she continued across the quad, leaving Marielle to wonder exactly how deep the Poseidon Group's influence ran. Lieutenant Commander Phoenix's office was Spartan compared to most officers of his rank. No "I love me" wall covered with photographs alongside. Dignitaries. No shadow boxes displaying medals or citations. A single framed photograph of a SEAL platoon stood on his desk, alongside a well-worn copy of The Art of War. When Marielle entered, Phoenix was engaged in intense conversation with Commander Vetch from Naval Intelligence. Both looked up as she approached, their discussion cutting off abruptly. "Lieutenant," Phoenix acknowledged. "Thank you for coming early." "Of course, sir." Commander Vetch gathered several folders from Phoenix's desk. "I'll have those personnel files sent over within the hour, Commander, Lieutenant." She nodded to Marielle as she left, closing the door behind her. Phoenix gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Sit down, Lieutenant. We have a situation developing." Marielle sat, her posture remaining regulation perfect despite the pain in her ribs. "Sir?" "Master Chief Acosta was escorted off base an hour ago," Phoenix said without preamble. 30 minutes later, he made a call to retired Admiral James Thornton. The name sent a chill through Marielle. James Thornton, former head of Naval Special Warfare Command and founding member of the Poseidon Group. His influence in Washington was legendary, his connections reaching into the Pentagon, Congress, and defense contractors who controlled billions in military spending. "I see," she said carefully. "Do you?" Phoenix leaned forward. "Because what you need to understand is that this just escalated beyond a training issue. Admiral Thornton has already called the Secretary of the Navy. Your father is being portrayed as emotionally compromised, using his position to intervene on behalf of his daughter." Marielle's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened." "Facts matter less than perception in Washington," Phoenix replied. "The narrative is forming, standards are being lowered to accommodate political correctness, and Admiral Wren is leading the charge because of personal bias. The evidence is being questioned, the bank records, the emails, all being characterized as circumstantial or taken out of context." Phoenix ran a hand through his close-cropped hair. "The Poseidon Group has spent years building a network designed to maintain their influence. They won't relinquish it without a fight." Marielle absorbed this, her mind racing through implications and potential countermoves. "What's our next step, sir?" Phoenix studied her for a moment, as if reassessing. "Our next step is to build an ironclad case that can't be dismissed or buried. We need testimony from other female candidates who experience similar treatment. We need documentation of the pattern beyond what Commander Vetch has already uncovered. Lieutenant Nakamura has already provided her statement. We need more." Phoenix opened a folder on his desk. "These are the files of every female candidate who entered SEAL training in the past 3 years. 27 women. Only one, you, completed the program successfully." Mariel stared at the stack of folders. "You want me to contact them? They're more likely to speak candidly with you than with me or any investigating officer." Phoenix's expression was grave. "But I won't pretend this doesn't put you in a difficult position. Coming forward places your career at risk." "My career was at risk the moment I decided to become a SEAL, Commander." Phoenix nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. There's something else you should know. Senior Chief Peterson has filed a formal complaint alleging that you received preferential treatment during training due to your father's position. Mariel's expression hardened. That's patently false. I know that. Admiral Carlyle knows that. But the complaint has been filed, which means it must be investigated. Phoenix closed the folder. You'll be temporarily removed from operational status pending the outcome. The words hit Mariel like a physical blow. Everything she had fought for, every boundary she had respected to ensure her accomplishments were earned and not given. All of it seemed suddenly precarious. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid, she said quietly. By not reporting Acosta's behavior, by handling it myself. And how is that working out for you, Lieutenant? Phoenix asked, his tone gentle but pointed. The bruises on your face tell a different story. Mariel had no answer. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant sound of a helicopter passing overhead. The investigation will clear you, Phoenix said finally. But in the meantime, we need to build our case against the broader conspiracy. Admiral Carlyle has authorized full access to personnel records, training documentation, and communications within the command. We start there. He handed her a security badge with expanded access credentials. You'll work directly with me and Commander Vetch. This stays absolutely confidential until we have enough evidence to move forward. Yes, sir. One more thing, Lieutenant. Phoenix hesitated. Your father has been called to Washington. The Secretary wants a personal briefing on the situation. Mariel's stomach tightened. When? He leaves tonight. The implications were clear. With Admiral Wren off base, the remaining members of the Poseidon group within the command would have greater freedom to maneuver against her. Understood, sir. Be careful, Lieutenant, Phoenix said as she rose to leave. The visible enemies aren't the ones you need to worry about. The echo of Nakamura's earlier warning sent a chill through Mariel as she left Phoenix's office. The day passed in a blur of activity as Mariel began reviewing personnel files and training records. The pattern that emerged was as disturbing as it was undeniable. Every female candidate had experienced training accidents under specific instructors. Medical reports documented injuries inconsistent with standard evolutions. Performance evaluations showed inexplicable variations. Candidates praised one day and deemed unsuitable the next. By evening, Mariel's eyes burned from hours of detailed analysis. She gathered her notes and secured them in Phoenix's office before heading back to her quarters. The base had quieted as darkness fell, most personnel having retreated to the officers' club or their homes off base. As she crossed the darkened quad, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Someone was watching her. She maintained her pace but heightened her awareness, scanning her surroundings without appearing to do so. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the sensation persisted. Approaching her quarters, Mariel noticed the security light above her door was out. Standard procedure dictated reporting such maintenance issues immediately for security reasons, but she hadn't left that morning in darkness. She slowed her approach, instinct screaming warnings. The lock appeared untampered with, but something felt wrong. Mariel placed her hand on the door handle, then hesitated. Instead of entering, she continued past her quarters toward the duty officer's station at the end of the building. Lieutenant Wren, she greeted the ensign behind the desk. Has maintenance been through the residential section today? The ensign checked his log. No, ma'am. No scheduled maintenance until tomorrow. I see. My security light is out. Could you log a request for replacement? Of course, ma'am. Mariel nodded her thanks and returned to her quarters, now fully alert. She drew her sidearm before opening the door, entering in a low tactical position. The room was dark and still. She reached for the light switch, weapon trained on the interior space. Nothing. The quarters appeared untouched, exactly as she had left them that morning. Mariel conducted a methodical search, checking closets, under furniture, and behind the shower curtain. No intruder, no signs of disturbance. Perhaps she was being paranoid. The events of the day had everyone on edge. She secured her weapon and began removing her uniform, wincing as the movement pulled at her bruised ribs. As she unbuttoned her blouse, something fluttered to the floor. A small piece of paper, folded once. Mariel picked it up, unfolding it carefully. Written in block letters was a simple message. Daddy can't protect you forever. Mariel stared at the note. ice spreading through her veins. Someone had been in her quarters. Someone had touched her uniform while it hung in her closet. The violation was intimate, the threat unmistakable. She refolded the note and placed it in her pocket. This wasn't something to report, not yet. It would only add fuel to the narrative that she couldn't handle the pressure, that she needed special protection. Instead, she methodically checked the locks on her doors and windows, then moved her desk chair to wedge against the doorknob, an old trick from deployments in unsecured locations. She placed her sidearm on the nightstand within easy reach before lying down on her bed, still fully clothed. Sleep would not come easily tonight. Across the base, Admiral Thaddeus Wren stood in his office, gazing out at the lights of San Diego twinkling across the bay. His dress blues were impeccable, ready for his flight to Washington. On his desk lay the dossier Commander Vetch had prepared, evidence of the Poseidon Group's systematic campaign to exclude women from special operations. The door opened behind him. Admiral Carlyle entered, his expression grave. "The car is waiting to take you to Andrews, Thaddeus." Admiral Wren nodded without turning. "Take care of her while I'm gone, Richard." "You know I will." Carlyle moved to stand beside him at the window. "The secretary is under considerable pressure. Thornton has been busy. I expected nothing less. This could cost you your stars. Some things matter more than rank." Carlyle studied his old friend's profile, sharp against the darkness beyond. "You've started a war, Thaddeus. The old guard won't surrender easily." "The old guard is fighting yesterday's battle," Wren replied. "The future of naval special warfare doesn't belong to them anymore." A knock at the door interrupted them. Commander Delmar entered with a secure phone. "Urgent call from the secretary, sir." Admiral Wren took the phone, listening intently. His expression remained impassive, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. "Yes, Mr. Secretary, I understand. I'll be on the next available flight." He returned the phone to Delmar. "Change of plans. The secretary wants me in his office at 0600 tomorrow. Alert the pilot we're leaving immediately." After Delmar left, Admiral Carlyle raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound promising." "The secretary has received disturbing information requiring immediate clarification," Wren replied, gathering his cover and briefcase. "Apparently, I've been running a personal vendetta against Master Chief Acosta for years, stemming from when I was his training officer." "That's absurd." "It's politics." Wren checked his watch. "I need to go. Keep an eye on Phoenix's investigation, and watch Peterson. He's been Acosta's right hand from the beginning." "And Marielle?" Admiral Wren paused, his hand on the doorknob. "My daughter is a naval officer and a SEAL. She can take care of herself." But as he walked toward the waiting staff car, his steps measured and controlled as always, Admiral Wren couldn't shake the feeling that events were accelerating beyond even his ability to manage. For the first time in his distinguished career, he was entering a battle without clear intelligence or established strategy. At 2300 hours, Marielle was jolted awake by a sharp knock at her door. She reached immediately for her sidearm, moving silently to position herself beside the entrance. "Lieutenant Wren," called a voice she recognized as Ensign Davis, the duty officer. "Emergency recall. All operators report to the team room immediately." "Acknowledged," she called back, hearing his footsteps continue down the hallway to the OIF next door. Emergency recalls were not uncommon in the teams. Crisis situations could arise anywhere in the world requiring immediate SEAL deployment. But the timing, coming hours after her father's departure for Washington, set alarm bells ringing in Marielle's mind. She dressed quickly, securing her weapon in its holster, and headed for the team room. Other operators were already gathering, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and resignation. Emergency recalls often meant missed family events and hastily canceled plans. Senior Chief Peterson stood at the front of the room, his bearing commanding attention. As Marielle entered, his gaze found her immediately, a cold smile touching his lips. "Lieutenant Wren," he acknowledged. "So glad you could join us." Something in his tone made the hair on the back of Marielle's neck stand up. This wasn't a standard recall. "What's the situation, Senior Chief?" asked Lieutenant Ryan Teller, Marielle's platoon commander. "Training evolution," Peterson replied. "Full combat load, live fire qualification course. Admiral Carlyle wants all operators certified before the end of the month. We're starting tonight." Murmurs of surprise and confusion spread through the room. Live fire qualifications at night with no advance notice was highly irregular. Senior Chief, Mariel said, keeping her voice neutral, standard protocol requires 24-hour notice for live fire evolutions to ensure proper rest and preparation. Peterson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Protocol has been temporarily suspended on Admiral Carlisle's authority, Lieutenant. Unless you feel you aren't prepared. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. He was daring her to refuse, to ask for special treatment, to confirm every whispered accusation that women didn't belong in the teams. I'm always prepared, Senior Chief, she replied evenly. Excellent. Peterson addressed the room. Gear up. Transport leaves in 15 minutes. As the operators dispersed to retrieve their equipment, Lieutenant Commander Phoenix entered the team room. His gaze swept the activity before settling on Peterson. Senior Chief, what's going on here? Emergency live fire qualification, sir. Admiral Carlisle's orders. Phoenix's expression darkened. I spoke with Admiral Carlisle an hour ago. He mentioned no such evolution. The orders came through Commander Hayward, sir, Peterson replied smoothly. I have the authorization here. He handed Phoenix a folder containing official-looking documentation. Phoenix reviewed it quickly, his frown deepening. This is irregular, Senior Chief. These are irregular times, sir. Peterson glanced meaningfully toward Mariel. Standards must be maintained regardless of political considerations. The implication was clear. This was a direct response to the day's events, a demonstration that the old guard still controlled the training and qualification process. Phoenix handed the folder back. I'll be observing this evolution. Personally, Senior Chief. Of course, sir. We welcome the oversight. As Phoenix turned away, his eyes met Mariel's briefly. A warning passed between them without words. Be careful. This is a trap. Mariel nodded almost imperceptibly before continuing to the armory to draw her weapons and ammunition. Whatever game Peterson was playing, she would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. 30 minutes later, 2 transport vehicles carried the operators to the remote training facility on the far side of the base. The compound was isolated by design, allowing for realistic combat simulations away from administrative areas. As they approached, Mariel noticed something odd. The facility was dark. Standard procedure required full illumination of the staging area, even for nighttime operations. Safety protocols demanded visibility for weapons checks and final briefings. The vehicles stopped, and operators began disembarking. Peterson stood by the lead vehicle, issuing instructions to each team as they gathered their gear. Lieutenant Wren, he called as she shouldered her combat load. You'll be first through the course tonight. Lead by example. Mariel nodded, concealing her unease. Going first meant navigating an unfamiliar course layout, without the benefit of observing others' approaches. It was another subtle challenge, one more test designed to see if she would break. Lieutenant Commander Phoenix approached, his expression grim. This doesn't feel right, he said in a low voice. The range safety officer isn't present. The illumination is inadequate. I'm going to call this off. Before he could act, Commander Hayward emerged from the darkness. Lieutenant Commander Phoenix, joining us for the qualification? Commander, Phoenix acknowledged. There appear to be some safety protocols being overlooked here. I recommend postponing until proper procedures can be followed. Hayward smiled thinly. Your concern is noted, but this evolution has been authorized at the highest levels. We're proceeding as planned. Phoenix's jaw tightened. Then I'll be observing from the control tower. Of course. Hayward turned to Mariel. Lieutenant Wren, ready to demonstrate those SEAL standards you fought so hard to uphold? The taunt was barely veiled. Mariel met his gaze steadily. Always ready, sir. As she moved toward the starting position, checking her weapons one final time, Mariel couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far more dangerous than a standard qualification course. The note in her uniform, the irregular timing, the absent safety protocols, everything pointed to a carefully orchestrated scenario. The course layout was explained hastily by Peterson. Room clearing, target discrimination, movement under fire. Standard components, but arranged in an unfamiliar configuration, without the usual walkthrough or dry run. Communications check, Mariel said into her headset. Silence. No response from the control tower or safety officers who should have been monitoring the evolution. Comms appear to be down, she reported to Peterson. "Proceed anyway, Lieutenant," he ordered. "Unless you feel unsafe. Another challenge, another trap. If she refused, it would be documented as a failure of nerve. If she proceeded without proper safety protocols and something went wrong, the responsibility would be hers alone." Marielle made her decision. "Ready to proceed, Senior Chief." Peterson smiled coldly. "Timer starts on my mark. 3, 2, 1, execute." Marielle moved into the darkened course, her night vision equipment providing a greenish view of the surroundings. The first room was standard, target silhouettes positioned to test discrimination between hostile and civilian figures. She engaged the threats with precision, her muscle memory guiding her movements despite the unfamiliar layout. The second room was darker than it should have been. The infrared illuminators typically used to ensure visibility even with night vision were either off or malfunctioning. Mariel slowed her approach, proceeding with heightened caution. As she entered, movement to her right caught her attention. She swung toward it, finger indexed alongside her trigger guard until threat identification could be confirmed. A silhouette raised what appeared to be a weapon. In the split second before she engaged, Marielle noticed something wrong. The target's positioning was unusual, placed in the direct path of her entry, rather than in the standard layout designed to test peripheral awareness. She held her fire, adjusting her position to get a better angle. The threat was a standard silhouette, but someone had modified it. The outline had been given long hair, and across its chest was written a single word: daughter. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't a qualification course. It was an elaborate setup designed to provoke a reaction, to force an error that could be used against her. Marielle lowered her weapon slightly, controlling her breathing as she surveyed the room for actual threats. Movement behind her triggered her combat instincts. She spun, weapon raised. A figure stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the faint light from outside. Not a target silhouette. A person. "Lieutenant Wren," came Senior Chief Peterson's voice, distorted by her adrenaline and the night vision equipment. "Failure to engage designated threats. Course terminated." The lights suddenly blazed on, blinding Marielle through her night vision goggles. She ripped them off, blinking against the sudden illumination. Peterson stood before her, a satisfied smile on his face. Behind him, Lieutenant Commander Phoenix was approaching rapidly, his expression thunderous. "What the hell is this?" Phoenix demanded, gesturing toward the modified silhouette. Peterson feigned surprise. "Vandalism, clearly. Unauthorized modification of training equipment. I'll launch an investigation immediately." But his eyes told a different story as they met Mariel's. This was a message, a demonstration of power. The Poseidon Group was showing her that they controlled every aspect of her environment, even with her father gone for just a few hours. "This evolution is terminated," Phoenix declared. "All personnel stand down and secure weapons. Commander Hayward, I want a word with you immediately." As the operators began to disperse, Peterson moved close to Marielle. "Daddy can't protect you forever, Lieutenant," he whispered, echoing the note from her quarters. "The teams will correct this mistake, one way or another." Marielle met his gaze without flinching, years of training controlling her response despite the rage building inside her. "Is that a threat, Senior Chief?" "No, Lieutenant," he replied with cold certainty. "It's a promise. Have you ever faced a situation where someone deliberately set you up to fail? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below, and subscribe to see how Lieutenant Wren responds to this deliberate challenge in the final part of our story. The sun had not yet risen over Naval Special Warfare Command when Lieutenant Commander Ezra Phoenix called the emergency meeting. The officers gathered in the secure conference room looked exhausted, the events of the previous night etched in the shadows under their eyes. Marielle sat ramrod straight despite her fatigue, the modified target silhouette from the qualification course laid out on the table before them. Beside it was the note from her quarters, now sealed in an evidence bag. She had finally reported it after the events at the training facility. "This was a coordinated intimidation attempt," Phoenix said without preamble, "conducted by senior enlisted personnel against a commissioned officer." Commander Vetch nodded, adding another folder to those already spread across the table. "We've confirmed Commander Hayward fabricated the authorization for last night's evolution. Admiral Carlisle never approved it." "Where is Commander Hayward now?" asked Lieutenant Ryan Teller, who had witnessed the previous night's events. Confined to quarters pending investigation, Phoenix replied. Senior Chief Peterson as well. Lieutenant Nakamura, who had been brought into their small circle of trust, examined the silhouette with clinical detachment. They're getting desperate. This is sloppy compared to their usual methods. Sloppy but effective, Phoenix acknowledged. They're creating a record of Lieutenant Wren's failures to justify her removal from the teams. Mariel spoke for the first time. The question is why now? They've had 18 months to force me out. Phoenix and Vetch exchanged glances. It was Vetch who answered, sliding a classified intelligence brief across the table. Because of this, Department of Defense is preparing a major policy expansion for women in special operations. Your success as the first female SEAL has been cited as evidence that gender integration works. The timeline for full implementation is accelerating. And the Poseidon Group stands to lose millions, Phoenix added. Their defense contracts are built around maintaining the status quo. Expanded opportunities for women means new training protocols, new equipment specifications, new consulting requirements. Mariel studied the document. So, I'm not just an irritant. I'm a financial threat. Precisely, Vetch confirmed. Which is why they're escalating. Admiral Wren's investigation exposed part of their network. Now they need to discredit both of you before more damage is done. Phoenix checked his watch. Admiral Wren meets with the Secretary of the Navy in 90 minutes. We need to get ahead of whatever narrative the Poseidon Group is pushing in Washington. How? Teller asked. We're operating on base in Coronado. The Secretary is 3,000 miles away. We send him everything, Mariel said, her voice steady. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, every connection between the Poseidon Group and the training cadre. No filters, no summaries, raw data. Phoenix nodded slowly. Direct to the Secretary, bypassing the normal chain. It's irregular, but given the circumstances, it's our only option, Vetch finished. If we follow standard protocols, this evidence will be buried before it reaches his desk. The small group moved with practiced efficiency, compiling the extensive documentation they had gathered over the past 24 hours, testimony from female candidates who had been forced out, financial records showing payments from defense contractors to key training personnel, communications revealing a systematic effort to undermine gender integration. As they worked, Mariel found herself increasingly aware of the stakes. This wasn't just about her career, or even her father's. It was about the future of naval special warfare, about ensuring that qualification was based on capability, not gender or connections. Transmission complete, Vetch announced 30 minutes later. Secretary Lowell should have the full dossier before Admiral Wren enters his office. Phoenix's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His expression darkened as he read it. Admiral Carlisle wants all command staff in the main briefing room at 0800, full dress uniforms. The officers exchanged glances. Full dress for an internal meeting was highly unusual. It gets worse, Phoenix continued. Retired Admiral Thornton arrived on base 20 minutes ago. He's been granted full access by the Pentagon. Mariel felt her stomach tighten. James Thornton, the architect of the Poseidon Group and her father's longtime adversary, was now physically on the base. The battlefield had shifted. They're making their move, Nakamura said quietly. With your father in Washington, they see an opportunity to consolidate control. Then we make our move first, Mariel replied, rising from her chair. 0800 in the briefing room, full dress. The command briefing room was filled to capacity when Mariel arrived at precisely 0745. Officers and senior enlisted personnel stood in tight clusters, conversations dying as she entered. She noted the divisions immediately, those who met her eyes with respect, those who pointedly looked away, and those who watched with calculating interest to see which way the wind would blow. Admiral Carlisle stood at the front of the room with Commander Hayward and Senior Chief Peterson. Beside them was a tall, distinguished figure with 4 stars on his collar despite his civilian suit. Retired Admiral James Thornton. His silver hair and patrician features projected authority and absolute confidence. When his gaze fell on Mariel, she saw not hatred, but something colder, the dispassionate assessment of an obstacle to be removed. Lieutenant Commander Phoenix entered behind Mariel, followed by Commander Vetch and Lieutenant Nakamura. They positioned themselves strategically around the room, a silent statement of allegiance. At precisely 0800, Admiral Carlyle called the meeting to order. "Gentlemen, lady," he began, his tone formal, "I've called this meeting to address concerns that have been raised about the integrity of our training protocols and command structure." He gestured to Admiral Thornton, who stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to deference. "Thank you, Richard. For those who don't know me, I'm Admiral James Thornton, retired. I've been asked by the Secretary of Defense to conduct an independent review of recent events at Naval Special Warfare Command." His gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on Marielle. "Serious allegations have been made concerning preferential treatment, command interference, and the undermining of established standards. These allegations strike at the heart of what makes our special operations forces the best in the world." Thornton picked up a folder from the table. Master Chief Acosta, a decorated operator with 22 years of distinguished service, has been relieved of duty based on accusations that appear, upon preliminary review, to be without substantial merit. Murmurs spread through the room. Marielle remained perfectly still, her expression neutral, despite the rage building inside her. "Furthermore," Thornton continued, "there is evidence suggesting that Admiral Thaddeus Wren has used his position to advance his daughter's career, undermining the integrity of the selection and training process." The murmurs grew louder. Phoenix caught Marielle's eye across the room, his expression conveying a silent message. "Wait. In light of these concerns and pending a full investigation, I have been authorized to implement the following interim measures." Thornton's voice cut through the noise with practiced authority. "First, Master Chief Acosta will be reinstated to his position as lead CQC instructor, effective immediately." Peterson smiled smugly at this announcement. Beside him, Commander Hayward straightened, anticipating his own vindication. "Second, all female candidates currently in the SEAL training pipeline will be placed on administrative hold until the investigation is complete." The message was unmistakable. The door was being closed again. "Finally, Lieutenant Marielle Wren will be temporarily reassigned to Naval Station Norfolk, effective immediately, to ensure the investigation can proceed without any appearance of impropriety." Thornton closed the folder with an air of finality. "These measures have been approved at the highest levels and are not open to discussion." The room had gone deathly silent. Marielle felt every eye upon her, waiting for her reaction. If she protested, she would confirm their accusations that she expected special treatment. If she accepted, she would be effectively admitting guilt. Before she could respond, the doors at the back of the briefing room opened with a decisive bang. Admiral Thaddeus Wren stood in the doorway, his dress whites immaculate, his cover tucked precisely under his arm. The room instinctively rose to attention at the presence of the commanding officer. "As you were," Admiral Wren said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the suddenly silent room. He moved to the front with measured steps, acknowledging Admiral Carlyle with a nod before turning to face Thornton. "James, it's been some time." "Thaddeus!" Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I was led to understand you were in Washington." "I was," Admiral Wren confirmed. "I've just returned from meeting with the Secretary of the Navy. It was most illuminating." He turned to address the room at large. "It appears there has been some confusion about the chain of command and the direction of this investigation." From his briefcase, Admiral Wren withdrew a folder bearing the seal of the Secretary of the Navy. "The Secretary has reviewed the evidence concerning the systematic targeting of female candidates in the SEAL program. His findings are unequivocal." He opened the folder and read directly from the document within. "Having examined the evidence presented by Admiral Thaddeus Wren and his investigative team, I find compelling proof of coordinated efforts to undermine the lawful integration of female personnel into naval special warfare units. These efforts represent a direct contravention of Department of Defense policy and constitute conduct unbecoming of officers and enlisted personnel." Admiral Wren looked up from the document, his gaze sweeping across the room. "The Secretary has authorized immediate and comprehensive action to address these findings." He continued reading. "Effective immediately, I am ordering a complete review of all training protocols and personnel assignments within Naval Special Warfare Command. Admiral Thaddeus Wren will oversee this review with full authority to implement necessary reforms." Thornton's face had gone rigid. "Thaddeus, this is highly irregular. The Pentagon has authorized my investigation." "The Pentagon." Authorized a preliminary assessment, Admiral Wren corrected him. The Secretary's directive supersedes that authorization. But please continue to observe. Your perspective as a representative of the Poseidon Group will be noted in the official record. A shock rippled through the room at this direct acknowledgement of Thornton's connection to the shadowy organization. That's an outrageous accusation, Thornton blustered, but his confidence was visibly shaken. Is it? Admiral Wren nodded to Commander Vetch, who stepped forward with her own folder. Admiral Thornton has received consultancy fees exceeding $2 million over the past 3 years from defense contractors affiliated with the Poseidon Group, Vetch stated clearly. During this same period, he has repeatedly advocated against gender integration in special operations, citing unspecified security concerns that align precisely with Poseidon Group talking points. Thornton's face flushed with anger. This is character assassination. This is factual reporting, Admiral Wren replied calmly. Something the Secretary found most relevant to the current situation. He returned to the Secretary's directive. The following personnel actions are to be implemented immediately. Commander Victor Hayward and Senior Chief Gregory Peterson are relieved of duty pending court-martial proceedings for conduct unbecoming, conspiracy, and creating a hostile environment. The 2 men stood frozen in shock as Marine guards entered the room, positioning themselves on either side of the doorway. Master Chief Donovan Acosta will remain relieved of duty and faces similar charges. Admiral Wren continued. Additionally, an independent review board will examine all female candidate separations over the past 3 years to determine if reinstatement is warranted. The Admiral closed the folder, his expression grave. Let me be absolutely clear. This command will uphold the highest standards of professionalism and integrity. Any individual who cannot abide by those principles has no place in naval special warfare. His gaze moved deliberately to Thornton. That includes those who use their influence and connections to undermine lawful policy for personal or financial gain. Admiral Carlisle stepped forward. Marine escorts will accompany Commander Hayward and Senior Chief Peterson to retrieve their personal effects, after which they will be escorted off base. As the disgraced officers were led from the room, a hushed tension settled over the assembled personnel. The swiftness and decisiveness of Admiral Wren's counter-move had caught everyone off guard. Admiral Wren turned to Lieutenant Commander Phoenix. Commander, please distribute copies of the Secretary's directive to all department heads. I want complete transparency throughout this process. Yes, sir, Phoenix acknowledged, moving to carry out the order. The remainder of you are dismissed, Admiral Wren announced. Department heads will receive further instructions regarding the review process by end of day. As the room began to empty, officers and enlisted personnel filed past Marielle. Some avoided eye contact entirely. Others offered subtle nods of respect. The battle lines were being redrawn in real time. When only the core group remained, Admiral Wren, Admiral Carlisle, Commander Vetch, Lieutenant Commander Phoenix, and Lieutenant Nakamura, Marielle finally spoke. Sir, how did you get back from Washington so quickly? A ghost of a smile touched Admiral Wren's lips. I never went. But the Secretary was fully briefed via secure video conference from Admiral Carlisle's office last night, Admiral Wren explained. While Thornton believed I was 3,000 miles away, I was actually coordinating with naval intelligence to document the full extent of the Poseidon Group's influence. A calculated risk, Admiral Carlisle added. We needed Thornton and his associates to make their move while believing they had the advantage. Which they did, quite spectacularly, Commander Vetch observed. The fabricated training evolution, the intimidation attempts, Thornton's direct intervention, all of it now documented as part of a coordinated conspiracy. Marielle absorbed this, understanding the strategy her father had employed. You used me as bait. I used their assumptions against them, Admiral Wren corrected. They believed that with me gone, you would be vulnerable. Their eagerness to exploit that perceived vulnerability exposed their entire network. Admiral Carlisle checked his watch. We should continue this discussion later. The second phase begins in 30 minutes. Second phase? Nakamura asked. The public reckoning, Admiral Wren replied. All personnel assembly on the main parade ground at 1,000 hours. Under the bright California sun, the entire complement of Naval Special Warfare Command stood in formation on the parade ground, Operators in their dress whites formed perfect lines, the gold seal tridents on their chests catching the light. Support personnel and administrative staff filled out the ranks behind them. A raised platform had been erected at the front, where Admiral Wren now stood with Admiral Carlisle and the other members of the command staff. Secretary of the Navy. Harrison Lowell had arrived by helicopter 20 minutes earlier and now stood beside them, his presence underscoring the gravity of the occasion. Mariel stood in the front row of her platoon, aware of the eyes that occasionally flickered her way. The bruises on her face were still visible, though beginning to fade. She had made no attempt to conceal them. They were evidence, not of weakness, but of the battle she had fought. Admiral Wren stepped to the microphone. "At ease," he commanded, and the assembled personnel relaxed their posture slightly. "I've called this assembly to address matters that affect the core principles of Naval Special Warfare Command," he began, his voice carrying across the parade ground. "Throughout our history, this command has prided itself on upholding the highest standards of excellence, integrity, and adaptability." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the formations. "Those standards have been tested recently, not by external threats, but by resistance to necessary evolution within our own ranks." The Admiral gestured to Secretary Lowell, who stepped forward. "The Secretary of the Navy has authorized me to implement comprehensive reforms to ensure that our training and operational protocols reflect the reality of modern warfare and the full spectrum of talent available to this command." Murmurs rippled through the formations, despite the discipline of the assembled personnel. "Let me be absolutely clear," Admiral Wren continued. "The standard for naval special warfare has always been and will always be excellence. Not gender, not background, not connections. Excellence." His voice took on a harder edge. "Those who have attempted to undermine this principle through intimidation, sabotage, or abuse of authority have done a disservice not only to this command, but to the nation we are sworn to protect." Secretary Lowell stepped to the microphone. "As of this morning, I have directed a comprehensive review of all training protocols within naval special warfare. This review will be led by a committee that includes both experienced operators and independent experts in military training and integration." He nodded toward Mariel's position in the formation. "Lieutenant Mariel Wren will serve on this committee based on her unique perspective as both a qualified operator and a target of the systematic abuse we are now addressing." A collective intake of breath ran through the assembled personnel. The Secretary's direct acknowledgement was unprecedented. "I am also announcing the formation of a new division within Naval Special Warfare Command," Secretary Lowell continued. "The Training Reforms Division will develop and implement modernized protocols that maintain our rigorous standards while eliminating outdated practices that do not contribute to operational effectiveness." He paused, allowing his next words to carry their full weight. "Lieutenant Commander Ezra Phoenix will head this division, with Lieutenant Wren serving as Deputy Director once the initial review is complete." Admiral Wren returned to the microphone. Change is never easy, particularly in an organization with such proud traditions. But adaptation has always been the hallmark of naval special warfare. We evolved from underwater demolition teams to SEALs. We adapted from conventional warfare to counter-terrorism. Now, we must evolve again to incorporate all qualified personnel, regardless of gender. His gaze moved across the formations, settling briefly on his daughter. "The measure of an operator is not defined by gender, but by courage, commitment, and competence. Anyone who meets our standards deserves to wear the trident. Anyone who undermines those principles dishonors everything this command stands for." As the assembly concluded, personnel began to disperse to their assigned duties. Mariel remained in position, processing the implications of what had just occurred. Her assignment to the Reform Committee wasn't just vindication. It was an opportunity to ensure that future female candidates wouldn't face the same systematic barriers she had encountered. Admiral Wren approached her as the parade ground emptied. Despite the public setting, this was the first moment father and daughter had spoken directly since the crisis began. "Lieutenant," he acknowledged formally. "Admiral," she replied, coming to attention. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing toward the path that led along the bay. They fell into step beside each other, maintaining professional distance but walking with the same measured cadence. For several minutes, neither spoke, content to move in companionable silence as they had so often during Mariel's childhood. "You took a significant risk," she said finally. Thornton has powerful allies in Washington. Some principles are worth risking everything for, Admiral Wren replied. Even your career? Especially my career. He glanced at her. What value is rank if it isn't used to uphold the standards we claim to believe in? Marielle considered this. I never asked for your intervention. You never had to. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You are your mother's daughter, stubborn, principled, unwilling to bend even when the storm threatens to break you. The mention of her mother sent a pang through Marielle's chest. Catherine Wren had been gone for 10 years, but her influence remained a steady presence in both their lives. She would have been proud of you, Marielle said quietly. She would have been proud of us both, he corrected, but mostly of you. You fought your battle with honor, Lieutenant. You never compromised your integrity, even when it would have been easier to surrender. They reached a point where the path curved along the water's edge. San Diego Bay stretched before them, naval vessels cutting clean lines through the blue water. On the horizon, the silhouette of a carrier battle group was visible, returning to port. What happens now? Marielle asked. Now we build, Admiral Wren replied. The barriers have been exposed, the opposition has been neutralized. But the real work lies ahead, creating a naval special warfare command that truly embodies the meritocracy we've always claimed to be. He turned to face his daughter fully. It won't be easy. There will be resistance, setbacks, new challenges we haven't anticipated. I'm not afraid of difficult, Marielle said with quiet confidence. No, her father agreed. You never have been. For a moment, they stood side by side, watching the ships move across the bay. Father and daughter, admiral and lieutenant, each having fought their own battle in service of the same principle. I should report to Lieutenant Commander Phoenix, Marielle said eventually. We have a committee to organize. Admiral Wren nodded. Carry on, Lieutenant. Marielle came to attention and saluted crisply. The Admiral returned the salute with equal precision. Then, without further words, they parted, each returning to their duties, their shared victory acknowledged but not dwelled upon. 6 months later, a new class of Bruised candidates ran along the shore of Coronado, their faces set with determination as they pushed through the grueling evolution. Among them were 5 women, moving with the same grim purpose as their male counterparts. Lieutenant Marielle Wren watched from a distance, her uniform now bearing the insignia of her position in the Training Reforms Division. The bruises on her face had long since faded, but the changes she had helped implement were only beginning to take root. Beside her stood Lieutenant Commander Phoenix, reviewing the training metrics on his tablet. Attrition rates are holding steady across gender lines, he noted. The revised protocols are working. It's a start, Marielle acknowledged. We still have a long way to go. Progress isn't always linear, Phoenix replied, but it is inevitable when the standard is excellence rather than tradition for tradition's sake. The instructor with the candidates called out a cadence as they approached the final stretch of their run. The Wren standard, nothing less. Marielle raised an eyebrow at Phoenix. The Wren standard? He smiled slightly. It's caught on throughout the training cadre. It means holding everyone to the highest standard without bias or preference, demanding excellence while ensuring the playing field is level. As the candidates passed, several of the women glanced toward Marielle, recognition and determination flashing in their exhausted faces. They straightened almost imperceptibly, finding an extra reserve of strength as they pushed toward the finish line. They see you as a symbol, Phoenix observed. I never wanted to be a symbol, Marielle replied. I just wanted to be a seal. Sometimes we don't choose the mantle we wear, he said, but we can choose what to do with it once it's ours. In the distance, Admiral Thaddeus Wren stood observing the training evolution. His posture was as straight as ever, his uniform as immaculate. When his gaze met his daughter's across the field, he offered a slight nod of acknowledgement before continuing his inspection. Some battles are fought with weapons, others with courage and conviction. Have you ever stood for what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent? Share your story of quiet strength and integrity in the comments, and subscribe for more tales of honor, justice, and the strength it takes to change a system from within.